The study session I prepared today is named The Future of Art and Technology. So let's start. This is a brief table of contents depicting what I'll be going over today. I'll start with a small introduction about myself before moving on to a brief history of traditional art, how modern art is distinct from traditional art, how math, science, and technology tie into art, then finally, how much entertainment art will change the landscape of the world within a few years. So, first things first, how did I get into the visual arts? First of all, both of my parents are artists. My father is a world-renowned ceramic artist, professor, and researcher specializing in the lost gen glaze and Yohen Tenmoku, a special type of Japanese porcelain glaze with Chinese roots. His work is displayed in museums all over the world, such as the British Museum, the Smithsonian Museum, and the National Museum of History in Taipei. On the other hand, my mother is a calligrapher and a seamstress. As such, I grew up in an artistic-minded family. However, I didn't get into art despite my family being very aesthetically inclined. This was a direct result of the environment I was raised in. California is a state known for its cutting-edge innovation in software and medicine. As such, from a young age, the California school system aggressively pushed me into a career in the life sciences or medicine. So most of my courses in high school were very heavy math and science. Most parents and students at my high school believed that art was kind of a purposeless field, so I had kind of a stigma going around towards myself because my parents were both pretty well-known artists. This unfair dichotomy kind of spawned an interest in my parents' artwork, but I was never able to study art seriously as I had to prepare to apply to university. When I started attending university, I had much more individual freedom of thought, which was a good and a bad thing. After being exposed to deeper levels of Japanese animation and manga in my university school club in my second year, I went out and purchased a digital drawing tablet on the left here. It's an Intuos 4, and it's very, very old. And as you can probably tell from the image on the right, I had no art training or aptitude whatsoever. More or less, drawing was a form of stress relief. So here we are. We'll revisit the next stage of my art adventure later, but for the time being, what exactly is art? The Oxford Dictionary entry defines art to be the visual expression or application of human creative skill and imagination. Usually, great works of art evoke an appreciation for the technical aesthetic or inspire ineffable stirrings within ourselves. For me, I can think of three main categories into which art can be distilled. The first is fine art, and it is usually the category people think of. Here's a picture of Gian Lorenzo Bernini's Ecstasy of Saint Teresa in Rome, Italy. It's a technical masterpiece as well as an emotional conduit for religious believers. Next is contemporary art in the center. This type of art is usually very abstract and not too technically oriented. I like to think of it as a cultural dialogue or criticism of current events. To be quite honest, I'm really unfamiliar with contemporary art as a whole. Lastly is entertainment art. Common types of art that fall into this category are games, movies, TV series, book covers, commercials, pop music, dance, and so forth. As the name gives it away, its goal is entertainment. It is amusing or exciting. We want to know the story. It grasps our attention, and when it has run its course, it is slowly forgotten. Entertainment art, in a sense, is an ephemeral experience. Unless we have constant exposure to the exact same entertainment art, we won't really remember it vividly later in our lives. And mostly entertainment art is the means to an end, usually a narrative dictated by a company, corporation, or a team of managers. For the rest of the talk, I will be focusing more in the realm of entertainment art, as that is the field I have experience with. Before I go over how technology has transformed our current method of creating entertainment art, we first have to have a basic understanding of what the traditional art mediums were and still are. Once we have a decent reference point, we can see how much computer technology has improved our workflow. I will be using the Renaissance as a starting point, since this was the time period in which the fundamental art mediums of painting, sculpture, and architecture were established and widely acknowledged by the masses to be the art standard. Let's start off with painting. This painting on the left here is called the School of Athens, which is a fresco by Raphael. Fresco is a type of mural painting in which pigment is mixed into lime plaster with water. As such, the painting is binded to the wall. Next up is sculpture. This particular marble sculpture is called Pietà, and it was carved by Michelangelo Buonarroti when he was only 23 years old. Lastly is architecture. The image on the right is a photograph I took by myself from outside St. Peter's Basilica in Vatican City. This project was initially started by Bramante, but the dome was eventually modified by Michelangelo, who was also an exceptional painter and an architect. You might be asking now, why did I go over the Renaissance when we live in the 21st century? The reason for that is the most widely used traditional art mediums from that time period translate almost directly into digital art. If you look at art online now, you usually see artworks fall into one of three categories, or digital painting, digital sculpture, or environment design. I've provided a few examples of my own artwork for reference. First is Fleet City, a collection of digital paintings I made. I was inspired to create these after visiting Venice during a Europe trip in early 2020, before the pandemic started. Next is Gesture, a digital sculpture also inspired by Venetian culture, notably the Carnival masquerade event. Last is environment design. This is usually divided into outer and interior design, and it is a parallel to traditional architecture. On the left is a sci-fi hangar I made after reading some Tsutomu Nihei manga, Knights of Sidonia, if you've ever heard of it, or Blame. On the right is a basic basilica inspired by Vézelay Abbey in Burgundy, France, and the winged victory of Samothrace found in the Louvre. Now that we're familiar with digital art, we can talk about art and technology. Traditional art is pretty straightforward. One puts in a certain amount of time and receives a certain type of output in the end. Digital painting follows the same quandary in that creating something from scratch based on craftsmanship alone is highly inefficient. Recently, a big cultural issue I often see is people working laboriously, yet inefficiently, to profess their craftsmanship abilities. As human beings, I understand that we want to take pride in our own work. However, do we really have to make everything from the ground up ourselves, much like in traditional art? In software engineering terms, if I build my own Docker image using someone else's Docker image as a base, is my work automatically invalidated? Do I have to code a Linux operating system like a Ubuntu from the ground up for my work to be valid? What about physically building the machine on which the code runs? What about pip install requirements.txt? Does every pre-made library I use make me less legitimate as an engineer? Of course not. The same principle should follow in digital art. Now that we've established that while digital art can be heavy on craftsmanship, it's also a new world that consists of building blocks that we didn't originally create ourselves. So how do we utilize the existing technologies to assist us? By far and away, the most popular digital medium is drawing and painting. The reason for this is the ease of access. If you have a tablet, pen, and drawing software, you can start right away. The most basic way in which computer-assisted art saves us is through the use of the Ctrl-Z keystroke. In the past, there was really small margin of error for traditional sculpture. In traditional painting, you had more leeway as you could just repaint areas you were dissatisfied with. In architecture, you really can't mess up with, or you could have some casualties in addition to atrocious-looking structures. If you create art using a computer, you get access to 3D packages such as Houdini or Blender. render engines such as Arnold, Cycles, or Redshift, and Photoshop, and or other 2D image processing softwares. Furthermore, you can create reusable 2D or 3D assets that can later be added to other projects at no cost to yourself. Lastly, there are pretty modern tools now that follow the procedural or node-based workflows. I'll elaborate on this more later as it has become an integral part of my art arsenal. Now we come to one of the elephants in the room, working hard versus working smart. In the context of entertainment art, this can alternatively be associated with the argument between 2D and 3D workflows. In most cases, sadly, creating a single 2D RGB monocular image isn't useful beyond a concept or to show your technical skills. The upside of painting or strictly 2D image creation is that it is quick and easy to block in suggestive or conceptual forms. It's also significantly faster than the 3D creation process, as you only need to render out one specific point of view. On the other hand, we have 3D creation. Once you have a 3D asset completely modeled, UV unwrapped, textured, rigged, lit, and rendered, you can keep using this asset over and over again. However, creating a 3D asset such as a human sculpture, structure, or device takes time. In the next few slides, I'll show some of my own artwork to really emphasize the differences between workflows. First off is a comparison between digital sketches, or ideation as I like to call it. These aren't meant to be final art pieces, but more of a collection of concept iterations or practice sessions to get an idea of what you want to do. The messy sketch on the left is an alla prima painting I did in about 30 to 40 minutes. The bust on the right is something I sculpted in ZBrush over the course of about 7 to 8 hours. Here's a small video of what it looks like. As you can see, it's quite expensive time-wise to create something in 3 dimensions. In addition, it's more mentally challenging since you require near-perfect form understanding if you want to get an acceptable result. Okay. Next is a comparison between polished pieces. The art on the left is a character design that I took the time to draw by hand. All in all, it took around 15 to 20 hours to draw older and younger versions of the woman on the left, along with the abstract insignias here. However, the digital sculpture on the right had to go through the entire pipeline of 3D sculpting, UV unwrapping, texturing, grooming, rigging, lighting, and rendering. All in all, I estimated this to take at least 700 hours. For reference, I started working on the gesture in early May 2021 and finally completed it in November 2021, so about 5 or 6 months. Here's a piece that I started making a few days ago that was inspired by the current global climate. It's created using a technique called photobashing. You can think of it as painting or collaging with photographs. This technique was notorious for eliciting contentious behavior from traditional artists towards the new generation of digital artists. Even now, the practice is still secretly frowned upon by people outside the entertainment industry. However, photobashing was born out of a necessity of meeting deadlines. Painting a photograph would take days, whereas just using portions of one merely takes a second. This particular sketch was created using various photographs I took during trips to Jogashima and Izu Coast in Japan, as well as the Amalfi Coast, Naples, and Florence in Italy. So far, it seems that the 2D workflow is faster, but gives a less polished result. However, this is not always the case. On the left is a collection of the structures I created when preparing for my Fleet City paintings. I've structured this talk in such a way that up until now, I have been keeping a clear distinction between strictly 2D only workflows and 3D only workflows. However, from here on out, I will be displaying work that contains a mixture of 2D techniques and 3D techniques. In this case, I had to front load my asset creation. What does it mean is that I created all the assets that I needed in the beginning before arranging them inside my 3D scene. Advantages of using 3D techniques are that you automatically get the correct lighting, perspective, and camera focal length. Once your scene is rendered out, you no longer have to worry about the technical aspects. From that point on, you are free to color grade or paint your story. This is where the unbounded magic truly happens. To reinforce that value of versatility, there are indeed instances where pure 2D workflows are just not feasible. In the Fleet City paintings, I wanted to design a small boat for the heroine. However, it would take me days to draw such a complex vehicle by hand, so I employed the use of computer-assisted design software, or CAD software. I learned SolidWorks in university as an engineer, so I was able to bring a part of my university education to my artwork. In the final part about 2D versus 3D workflows, I want to introduce a piece of software and hardware that I've started to incorporate into my art process. Here's a short clip. Earlier this year, I purchased an Oculus Rift 2 because I was interested in using it for art. I'm using a set of pre-modeled 3D models named kit bash sets as building blocks. You can think of them as Legos for set dressing. After all this talk about tools and techniques, you might be wondering, what is the ideal workflow? Should I just learn 3D and be done with it? In my opinion, visual design is a problem that can be tackled through an infinite number of possibilities. If you have trouble drawing in perspective in 2 dimensions, you should probably create in 3D. If you are coming from a 2D background, perhaps you do not need to go through the full 3D pipeline of modeling, UV unwrapping, texturing, etc. Perhaps just creating the basic form in 3D, then detailing it with paintovers is enough. You are also constrained in the sense that the deliverable format dictates your workflow as well. If you want to create a 3D animation, you have no choice but to go with 3D. If you're creating an illustration for a poster or a book or a mobile game, then your final deliverable will be in 2D. That's not to say that you can't use either workflow to assist you along the way. On a side note, the philosophical problem I run into during my art journey is that I am always stuck between the choice of studying or learning new art techniques and actually creating something. Now we get to the exciting part, node-based and procedural workflows. They've been around for a decade or even 2 decades for some companies. However, they've only really started to gain traction in the last 5 to 10 years. In my case, I have become a heavy adopter of node-based software such as Houdini, Substance Designer, SpeedTree, Nuke, Mari, and DaVinci Resolve. It will be faster to show you all the power of nodes in video. So, in this first example, I'll be showing Houdini, an incredibly powerful node-based 3D package. Individual nodes control the flow of the 3D creation process, so you can remove or modify a node at any time without it being a destructive process. In this case, I'm using the height fields library of the nodes to create a basic landscape that can then be eroded by realistic simulation. As you can see, creating an environment is like 5 or 10 minutes. Very fast. The second example is Houdini again. This time I'm creating a very simple column structure. The general idea is to make a primitive mesh like a shell of a cylinder, giving it thickness, then copying a rectangle to the walls of the cylinder as a makeshift brick. I'm adding in some very light coding to randomize the scale of the bricks. Afterwards, I combine all of the geometry into a voxel volume, then convert the amalgamation back into a dense mesh. In just the span of a few minutes, I have a ready-to-use asset that can be easily modified at any time. And yeah, so voxelizing to combine it, and then remeshing it so I have a polygon again. In this third example, I'll show a node-based workflow for a texture, not a model. Last year in the late fall, I visited a place called Sakurayama Koen in Gunma. At the time, there was the autumn leaves, or the koyo, so I wanted to capture some of that scene in 3D. Using the power of Substance Designer, I created a series of autumn-type leaves that would serve as the foliage material for trees. As you can see, I start off by constructing a single leaf blade, then aggregating it with other blades as well as a stem. Afterwards, I used a gradient map to give some vibrant colors, so turning a black and white image into a color image. Yeah. So you have all these maps here, and that's your final result. The fourth example is speedtree. So speedtree is a node-based vegetation modeling software. In conjunction with the previous procedural leaf texture, I can quickly create many different variations of autumnal foliage. In the case of speedtree, there are various nodes such as trunk, branches, and leaves. Depending on your desired result, you can add gravity, wind, or other forces to shape your tree. This is one of the many trees I quickly created in this software. Yeah. Okay, and these are the nodes. It's kind of complicated, but once you get used to it, it gets very fast. Lastly, I want to show some node-based procedures in software outside of 3D modeling or texturing in the case of video editing. DaVinci Resolve is my video editor of choice. Here's an example of color grading using DaVinci Resolve. I filmed these scenes using my mirrorless camera, a Fujifilm X-T4. Individual nodes can be used to non-destructively edit the white balance, color, a motion blur of the clip in question. If multiple scenes are shot under the same lighting conditions, you can reuse the same color grade, which makes this type of workflow temporally invaluable. Yep. Pretty interesting. And up until now, in the past, renderers found in 3D packages such as Mental Ray, Keyshot, or Arnold were CPU only. As such, it was not feasible for independent artists to create high-fidelity image and video without waiting a long time. However, the advent of real-time renderers such as Eevee and Blender and Unreal Engine 5 really changes the landscape of 3D visualization. Being able to see your creations in real time informs us of improvements we need to make to our work. It also helps artists to be more prolific as there's less of a gap between waiting time for renders. So here's a short clip of me performing look development on the trees I created in speedtree. Yeah. It looks, in my opinion, it looks pretty real. I'm convinced, but if you look carefully, you can see that the leaves are actually polygon mesh cards. So they, right now I've turned off wind right now, so they're not moving. But if you turn on wind, it looks very natural. Okay. So now that we've become familiar with the kinds of tools, techniques, and results we have available to us, we can look at current trends to see where entertainment art is headed. I've noticed that there are plenty of exceptional free 2D and 3D softwares now. For example, Krita is a nice alternative to Photoshop, and Houdini Apprentice and Blender are free 3D packages. Asset libraries such as Megascans and Textures.com also offer both free and paid high-quality materials and models for creatives. With an array of tools available to us, we only need to prioritize important people or objects or structures in the creation process. Everything else can be generated procedurally or scanned from real life. One application of art and technology in tandem is 3D printing. Artwork scan, whoops. There, this is a clip about using 3D printing with lost wax sculpting. What the people did here is they went around and took video and photographs of Michelangelo's sculptures, and then they took this information, brought it into 3D, and created a mold. And then this mold was used in conjunction with lost wax lost wax casting to make bronze sculptures. Yep. Okay. And if I were to take a glimpse into the future, I'd guess that recent technology has brought ownership of art back into the hands of artists. For example, Unreal Engine works on a royalty system in which the software is free. If the users become successful, only then does Unreal reap a portion of the profits. In addition, with the Earth slowly becoming more inhabitable or uninhabitable, people won't be able to go outside as much. There are many teams out there trying to save slowly deteriorating areas of the world for posterity by photo scanning them into a digital format. Art is also becoming more and more digitized. Through the internet, people with similar interests and tastes can easily coalesce into a fandom. I think it's reasonable to say that VR worlds hosted on blockchain could be another potential direction we are heading in. What I mean by VR worlds is think Animal Crossing, but instead of islands in which we need to use pre-existing game assets, we can use our very own artwork and engineering skills. This could act as our second home, identity, resume, business card, whatever you want. I'm going to play a short clip from the movie Belle, or Ryu to Sobakasu no Hime, to show a proof of concept.
Ultimate virtual community, created and governed by its 5 wise architects, known as the Voices. With over 5 billion registered users, it is the biggest internet society in history, and it is still growing. Launching the U app. U employs the latest body-sharing technology, which allows its users to come together, relax, or just have fun. Your avatar in U is called an AS and is automatically generated based on your personal biometric information.
Yeah, so if you know what Meta is or Facebook, I think this is what they're trying to do. And we already have the technology to do it with the VR headsets. Oops. At this point in digital arts life, I think it's worthy of being acknowledged as a technical profession and should be respected as such. The rise of the digital age marks the beginning of the fourth industrial revolution, in which the lines between the physical, digital, and biological world have become blurred. So here is, if you've seen Psychopaths, the anime, the government is run by brains, and if you look in the bottom right, if you know virtual idols, I think she's called Kizuna Ai. People actually go to concerts to see this 3D model, which is interesting. And here are graphs from the PricewaterhouseCoopers auditing firms analyzing the trends of entertainment and media. On the left graph, entertainment and media are supposed to have a forecasted revenue of $2.6 trillion in the year 2025. The right graph predicts that streaming video games, internet advertising, and virtual reality are projected to be the fastest growing areas over the next few years. As I have hopefully shown in this talk, entertainment art is no longer solely a crafts or trades job. It is legitimately a technical job that seeks to solve visual design problems. Before I move on, I want to further emphasize just how prevalent STEAM is. Most of the artists whose work I follow have strong math and science backgrounds. The first image here on the right, top right, is concept art from The Mandalorian by Jama Jurabayev. He studied aerospace engineering before deciding to become an artist in his very late 20s, which shows that, yeah, you can start at any age. The second work is by Entei Ryu, a freelance artist, a Japanese freelance artist. He attended the University of Tokyo, majoring in architecture. Both of these individuals have a workflow that combines 2D and 3D techniques. And lastly, I want to show some examples of STEAM in action. So STEM fields and art. The first is the stagecraft system developed by Industrial Light and Magic, which uses Unreal Engine.
Flexible. Today, I'm particularly excited to be rolling out Stagecraft 2.0. Stagecraft really is an end-to-end solution.
And almost every feature that's in there now came about because of a specific filmmaker request.
Unparalleled rendering power at incredible resolution, both on the walls and on the ceiling.
We've essentially built a platform that we can continue to build upon, from scouting to virtual cameras, motion capture performance, and finally LED volume content.
So whether it's the color pipeline, or the CG rendering, or the software or the hardware, because we are bringing that whole package together with all that experience, we've been able to solve those problems quickly and get to shooting.
It also
Okay. And the second technology is called Respeecher. It's an NLP technology that can change the voice of a person into that of another's. It's highly speculated that in the recent Kenobi TV series for Star Wars, Darth Vader's voice was created by overlaying Hayden Christensen's voice with the respeech version of James Earl Jones's voice, Darth Vader's original voice actor. Here's a short clip. You can decide if...
I am not your failure, Obi-Wan. You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker. I did. The same way, I will destroy you.
Oh, you guys can't hear? Oh, never mind. Alright, well, sorry about that. Maybe I can share the clip if you guys want to watch it later. Yeah. But yeah, on that note, that's the end of the presentation. Thanks for attending. If you have any questions, you can ask them now if you want.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a very interesting presentation.
Yeah, thanks.
I have a question actually.
Okay.
When you were explaining about, yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I think it was something I've never seen before, so it's interesting. When you explain about like how you have like different objects for a whole huge landscape, well, I think what was the name of the city thing?
Fleet City?
The Fleet City, yeah.
Yeah.
So when it sounded awfully similar to how like NFTs were made, and is this like a similar kind of like method how NFTs are made, or
Well, NFTs are basically just 2D illustrations or 3D object or 3D sculptures or models or whatever. People make them and they try to put them online under their blockchain signature. So it means that I, the artist, own this artwork, but other people can also own this artwork if they purchase this with their cryptocurrency. For me, I think this is not the direction we should be going in. I rather prefer the what I talked about here, which is if you guys couldn't hear this, it's the Bell movie, but basically I'm thinking that the future should be more open sourced, so everyone can create their own digital world, and people interested in your own digital world will join your blockchain. So if you know what blockchain is, it's basically, it could be like a decentralized internet between peers. So people that are interested in your artwork will join your blockchain, and then you will have kind of like a sphere of influence in this digital world. And if everyone connects to the same blockchain on a widespread network, creating their own internet, you can have this kind of large, giant digital metropolis where everyone's artwork is their character, or you can make a house. That's why I said it's like kind of like Animal Crossing. Yeah, hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Do I have any recommendations for people who want to start learning to create 3D art? Should they start with Blender? So if you want to start being an artist or creating something, it doesn't really matter what software you use, but more of understanding the principles behind how digital art is created. In 2D art, it's pretty easy. You put paint on canvas, or layers as they call it, and you just do your best to make something. In 3D art, you have to understand each phase of the pipeline. You can't simply put paint on a model. It doesn't work like that. I wish it did, but you have to first model something and make the mesh, and then you have to UV unwrap it. So you have to project these 3D coordinates onto a 2D space, and then you can paint on that 2D space, which is very strange, but that's the best way we've done it. For me, I started learning 3D in 2017 and 2018. I watched an anime called New Game, or it's also a manga, and it's about a girl who graduated from high school and she joined a video game company, and then she didn't know any 3D at all. So her teachers at the company gave her this book about Autodesk Maya. What I did is I also went online and I went to Amazon. I bought the same book and I went through it. It took me like 1 year. I don't think that's the recommended thing to do. I think, I think for now, Blender is something good to start with. And there's websites. If you go to Blender Foundation, they have tutorials on how to use the software. And on Houdini's website, SiteFX, they also have resources on how to learn. But Blender is more like traditional 3D. Houdini is really crazy. I've been using Houdini for almost 5 years, but it's a mixture of 3D modeling, texturing, and all that, but it's also very, very heavy on computer science. Like, you need to program half of the workflow as well in Python. So yeah, let me find the Blender Foundation. I think yeah, this is the link for Blender. I think they have a lot of free tutorials there, or like they have a few, yeah, first steps. And so, but most of the things I learned are from YouTube. Yeah. There's also, if I mentioned Jama Jurabayev, he has a series of Blender tutorials that you can purchase, but yeah, hold on, let me find it as well. This is his Gumroad. You can purchase like pretty reasonable price tutorials if you really want to get serious about it. And sometimes I do take classes from this website called Learn Squared. Here, I'll share that link as well. Yeah, maybe I can go to it here. Learn Squared. Yeah, this is a website. I took quite a few courses from this website. Yeah. You guys can see. The ones I took are visual storytelling, environment design, painting portraits. What else? Oh yeah, organic sculpting, designing better characters, Unreal environments. Yeah, I actually spent a lot of time learning from here as well. All right. Anything else you guys would like to know? Art is pretty hard, in my opinion, and I've been doing it for like over 10 years now. So I started in 2011, so yeah, it's not easy, and it's kind of quite a commitment if you want to be good or be okay at least. Your brother wants to study fine art, so you mean like traditional art or digital art? Just because it's yeah, fine art. Oh, he's interested in yeah, okay, so yeah, I would say yeah, Blender is good, Houdini is good. If you want to learn like from professionals in the industry, Learn Squared is pretty good. So before I started 3D in like 2017, and before that I was drawing and painting all the time, only drawing and painting for like 5 or 6 years. So yeah, I would say your fundamental skills are very important, but if you can't draw and paint, it doesn't matter too much if you are using 3D software. Yeah. Yeah, no problem. You're welcome. So, does anyone else have anything they're interested in? Or if you have questions about movie scenes, I can tell you if it's real or fake. Alright, I think that's it then. I think we're done. Or oh, so to me, it's easy to see if a scene. Yeah, it's pretty easy. You can see, like, do you guys know what green screening is? Like, maybe. Yes, green screen. This is what the movies you're watching look like. Like Marvel, most of the stuff is all fake. Yeah, Marvel scenes without CGI, but I did show the clip from Stagecraft, right? When I first saw this, I was like, it's basically
Around an actor, you're not physically
let
moving.
me see.
Dream about.
In the past,
Team is the
Okay. Let me go to this frame. I thought this was real. I thought they actually built this. This is everything besides these people is fake. All this down, like the ground is real. The people are real. All this TIE fighter, these structures, they're just giant panels of LED screens, and they just stack them next to each other. So this is just like this is like 30 or 40 TV screens put together, and then they show an image reflected from Unreal Engine 5. Which movie do you think has the best, most realistic CGI? In my opinion, I would guess everything created by Industrial Light and Magic in the last 1 or 2 years is very convincing. So, Mandalorian, season 1, season 2, and Obi-Wan Kenobi, the Kenobi series. It's very real to me. There's a way you can tell if green screen is being used. You have to check the eye color of the person, of the actor. If there's like a hue tint in their eye, it's all green screen. That's how you tell. It's a trick. And right now, if you guys watch Japanese anime, do you guys know Summertime Rendering? This anime? This anime uses CGI too. Or this one as well, Hoseki no Kuni. Yeah, this is all like CGI people. CGI. Yep. Alright, so anything else you guys want to know? Okay, thanks Addie for all the questions, and everyone else as well.